Good morning, church. Are you excited to be at church this morning? Is there somewhere else you would rather be this morning? No, this is the best spot to be. Turn to your neighbor and say, this is the best spot to be. Turn to the neighbor you just ignored and say, aren't you glad that you sat by me today? You should be so glad you sat by me. I'm excited to bring the word to you. If you have your Bible, you can go ahead and turn to Matthew chapter 26. Yes, we get excited about the Word of God. We'll be there here in just a few minutes, Matthew chapter 26. Today we're kicking off a new series, but as I was preparing this week and as I was getting just prepared for you for this morning, there's just something that started stirring in me. And what I noticed is this last week we had elections, and it seems like every year when elections start to come around that it's like everything just gets heated and it gets tense, and there's a side, you got to pick one side or the other, and everybody's against each other and every sort of thing, and there's all these hot topics. Do you know what I'm talking about, or are you just like in some other world right now? You know what I'm talking about? And as I was preparing and as I was praying, I just, one of them just started sitting with me, and I wasn't asked to preach on this today. I wasn't asked to talk about this today, but I just felt like, you know what, this is something that's going on, and this is something that we need to address. Is it okay if we address that quick this morning? So if you could go ahead and turn your attention, here's my house last night with all the Christmas lights on, because it's Christmas season. I don't care if it's not Thanksgiving yet. We got Christmas lights on our house, and we're celebrating Christmas. Some of you guys thought I was about to dive into some deep thing there, but it's crazy in our world right now that this is like a tension point for people. Like, how dare you put up Christmas lights? Guess what? It's my house. If you want to pay my mortgage, I'll put up the Christmas lights whenever you tell me to. But until that point, it's my house. And Christmas is here. Come on, somebody. Where are the people at? Where are the Christmas people at in the room? Oh, there's my people. Where are the people that you're like, I'm actually debating right now if I should pull my membership out of this church, because there's some of those people. We'll pray for you later. We'll pray for you. Hey, today we're kicking off a new series called The Blessed Life. Turn to your neighbor and say, blessed. Blessed. We're looking at the blessed life and how we have the most blessed life that we can have. And this series will be happening starting today and going for the next couple weeks. And we're going to be talking about giving. We're talking about tithing. We're talking about generosity. And what's funny to me is you can talk about a lot of things in church, but the moment you start talking about money, it's like, ugh. Like just looking out, and as I say, giving and generosity and tithing, it's like some of you guys, it's like a vein's about to burst in your head. Like, why do we have to talk about money? Church is funny. You can talk about all sorts of things. God, I give you my life. You can have God, I give you all of my relationships. God, I dedicate my children to you. You can have my kids, God, please. Please, God, have my kids. Please. I've never heard someone like, I'm just praying, like, should I dedicate my children to God? I don't know yet. But the moment we talk about money, it's like, ooh, I got to pray about that first. We get funny about money. Like what you said? We said what are we talking? Honey is what we're talking about today. Money. Actually, I'm not feeling too well. I gotta go. All of a sudden, you start talking about money, and it gets a little awkward. It gets a little tense. But what's crazy is you look at the Bible, and there's a lot to say about money in the Bible. About a third of the parables that Jesus taught on were about money. I think he thought we might have a hard time with money. I think he thought we might struggle with this topic of money, that we might want to keep it, that we might want to hoard it, that we might not want anyone to tell us what to do with it. Maybe you've heard this before. There's a verse that says, money is the root of all evil. And I've seen people say, well, if money is the root of all evil, then why does the church always talk about it? Well, maybe if you know your Bible, you know that verse just got quoted wrong. It's not money is the root of all evil, it's the love of money is the root of all evil. It says you can't have two masters. You'll either love one and you'll hate the other. You cannot serve both God and, say it, money. You can't serve both of them. It's one or the other. Money, it's this thing, it's this tense thing that begins to happen. I want you to know money is not a bad thing. Nowhere in the Bible does it say, like, you should not have money, you should not have nice things. The problem is not us having money, it's when money has us. And today I want you to know that I'm not preaching on this topic today because Pastor Weaver said, if you talk about money, I will give you a raise. That did not happen. I will not turn that down, but that did not happen. So you're saying there's a chance. We're not starting this series, the blessed life, because it's going to affect me. We're talking about the blessed life because it's going to affect you. It directly affects you. I want you to know, if you're new to New Hope, you should know this, that at New Hope, it is set up so that our pastors cannot see who gives and what they give. So it's not going to affect you because, well, if you start to give, then the pastors are going to begin just to love you more, and they're going to take you out to coffee more. No, we don't even know. I don't want to know who gives what because I don't want to treat people differently based on what they give or what they don't give. It directly affects you because it's your obedience to God, and blessing begins to flow from him when we give. And I'm hearing a lot of amens because that sounds to me like there's some people in here who know that that is true. Who know that when I give, when I tithe, when I'm generous, that God always brings it back. I don't know about you, but I've never regretted giving. There's been a lot of things in my life that I've had buyer's remorse on. Never once was it giving back to God. I've given more in missions than I've given to probably any other thing or than I've purchased for any other thing, and I've never regretted it. There's never been a moment like, I wish I actually, can I actually get that money back? I want to return it, right? I've never thought that because it always comes back. It always comes back. And this directly affects you. When it comes to giving, there's two types of giving. There's tithing and there's offering. It's the above and beyond, the generous gift. How it works is the tithing always comes first. Tithe, it's a mathematical term. It's kind of become a church term, but it's a mathematical term for 10%. And it's the first 10%. That the first 10% of whatever I get, I give back to God. Now some of you are going, 10%? 10%? That means if I make $100, I only get to keep $90? Great math. You passed. I don't know, Pastor Zach. That seems like, I don't know. I need that $100. I don't know. 10% just seems really high. Well, let's have a little perspective here. Some of you guys are going to go out to eat after church, and you're going to sit down and order your food, and at the end of your meal, you're going to sign the check. And there's a line there for a tip. Now, if you're tipping 10%, I want to say shame on you. But a tip is usually a minimum of 15%. And hopefully it's more like 20, and hopefully we're people who have been given a lot from God that we're generous back to people. So at minimum, it's 15%. And why we're giving the tip, why we're writing a 15% tip or 20% tip is we're saying, thank you for your service. Thank you for taking my order. Thank you for bringing out my food. Thank you for delivering my food. Can I tell you this morning that there's someone who has done a lot more than take your order, fill your drinks, deliver your pizza, and his name is Jesus, who came from heaven to earth, a perfect heaven to a broken earth to die for me so that I could have a free gift. A free gift? Then why does it cost me 10% if it's a free gift? I want you to know the tithe has nothing to do with you receiving salvation. It has everything to do with that I've received salvation. I don't give for it, I give from it. Generous people don't give for something, we give because we've received something. I don't give in an offering because I say, well, I want God's blessing, so I'm gonna give. I give in an offering because God deserves it, and it always ends up coming back to me. It's a free gift. It's for you and it's for me. And I think the problem that we have in culture today, the problem that I see is that many people have this someday mindset. Well, I know I should give 10%, but I'll give that someday. Maybe you're a student in here, a high school, middle school, a college student. You think, well, my job, it doesn't really pay much, and I'll give someday. Once I have a job, once I graduate, then I'll give. But you know what happens? Well, now I've got student loans, and I got to pay for student, and I got to pay rent now. So once I'm done with that, then I'll begin to tithe. Well, now I have this mortgage payment, I have this car payment, and once I'm done with that, that's when I'm gonna be, well, now I have to save up for my kids to go to college. And once I'm done with that, it's this someday mindset. That once I have enough, once I'm comfortable, then I'll give. And this is one of the greatest tricks of the enemy to us. To keep us in these chains from receiving the blessing that God has for us. For some, it's not the someday mindset. For some, it's the comparison mindset. Well, I make a lot of money, and I don't give 10%. I give 5%, but my 5%, it's a lot more than all those people give. So I should be good. Or it's the other side of it. Well, I don't really make much. Every penny is accounted for in my budget. That person makes a lot more. They should be giving more than what they are getting. They should be giving enough to cover what I'm not giving. Can I tell you that it's not equal giving, it's equal sacrifice. It's 10%. I'm called to give 10%. That's obedience that I give 10%, and then everything else is above and beyond. That's the sacrificial giving that I give above and beyond. But these two things, they will keep us trapped. These will keep us from living a blessed life. Relevant did this study. It's this Christian organization. They did a study of Christians in America who tithe, and here's what they found. Tithers make up only 10 to 25% of a normal congregation. And only 5% of the U.S. tithes, with 80% of Americans only giving 2% of their income. Look what they found next. What would happen if believers were to increase their giving to a minimum of 10%? There would be an increase of $165 billion for churches to use and distribute. If Christian Americans would increase to 10% giving, which is the minimum, that's the standard. That's me being obedient. There would be an increase in $165 billion. So what could we do with $165 billion? Here's what we could do. $25 billion could relieve global hunger and starvation and deaths from preventable diseases in 5 years. $12 billion could eliminate illiteracy in 5 years. $15 billion could solve the world's water and sanitation issues, specifically at places in the world where 1 billion people live on less than $1 per day. $1 billion could fully fund all overseas missions work. And there would be 100 to 110 billion left over for additional ministry. I don't say that to say, look, we're struggling, that we are only tithing this much. I say it to say, look at what God's plan would be. That if we were obedient, that wouldn't be an issue. If we just did what he said, all that would be solved. Can I tell you, at the end of the day, here's what it is. God does not want your money. Well, Pastor Jack, you just said that I have to give 10%. God does not want your money. He wants your heart. He wants all of you. He wants every piece. And what we see is that he can't transform what he cannot touch. He can't mold what he doesn't have a hold of. Does he have your heart this morning? I was reading this week of the story of this man named Ivan the Great. He lived in 15th century, and he was this warrior. And he began to conquer all these areas, and he was getting more and more warriors, and these were some very strong and mighty warriors. And one of his advisors came to him and said, Ivan, what we're seeing is you're going to war a lot, and if you die, there's no one to take your throne. So what we think you should do is you should go and get married and have a kid so there will be an heir to your throne. Ivan is definitely a guy's guy. He's like, I don't have time to find a wife. I've got work to do. Find one for me. So they go and they find someone. And they go to Greece and they find the king of Greece. He has a daughter. And they ask, would you let your daughter marry him? And the king was very pleased. He said, absolutely. But the only way that he can marry my daughter is if he converts to be a Greek Orthodox. Ivan agreed. He said, deal, all done. So he starts going through the crash courses to become Orthodox. And he goes through all of it, and it's time to get baptized. And he goes over there with 500 of his closest warriors. And they go over there, and all these other warriors, they decide, okay, we'll also do this. We'll also convert. So you can imagine the scene and you can imagine the hype. There's about to be 500 warriors, 500 priests out in the water doing baptism all at once. But as they started going through the baptism crash course, what they realized is that baptism as the final step, you can't be both a warrior and a member of the church. You can't professionally kill while being a member of this church. So they quickly huddled up and they came to this conclusion. Well, when the warriors are baptized, what they'll do is they'll just draw their sword out and they'll keep their sword in their hand above water while the rest of them goes under, and that's what we'll do to make it okay. It seems ridiculous, right? But I wonder for us how many times we go under and we say, God, just keep my wallet out of the water. Don't touch my credit card. Don't touch my checkbook. Don't touch my iPhone. God, you can have all of me, but don't mess with this. This is for me. I've worked hard for this. Does he have your heart today? It's a heart thing. Look what Matthew chapter 6 says. Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourself treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Notice the order here. It's treasure, then heart. I think in our minds many times it's, well, if I have a heart for something, then I'll give to it. But this says where your treasure is, there your heart will be, meaning that once you give, then you have a heart for that thing. Meaning if you do not have a heart for the things of God, begin to give and watch your heart begin to be transformed. Why? Because investment piques interest. I could care less what's going on in the stocks unless I have money in the stocks. Once my money is there, my heart is there, my interest is there. Maybe you could care less about missions. What you're going to see is if you begin giving to missions, if you begin being generous, you're going to have a heart for that. Your investment, it piques interest. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be. Where is your treasure this morning? Where is your heart this morning? Does he have all of it? Go ahead and turn to Matthew chapter 26. I asked you to turn there just a minute ago. This is the story that I want us to look at this morning. While Jesus was in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. Why this waste? Say, why this waste? They asked. This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor. Aware of this, Jesus said to them, why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare for my burial. Truly I tell you, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Let's break this verse down. We see that there at Simon the leper's house. Say the leper. Come on, say the leper. The leper. We know that this is not a current state for Simon. He does not currently have leprosy. This is a former state. Can you imagine having a nickname like Simon the leper? Right? Like imagine your nickname is, whatever your name is, the liar, the thief, the addict, right? That would be a pretty unfortunate name. We see that this, though, is a former issue that he had. Why do we know this? Because the law at this time would have been illegal for Jesus and his crew, his disciples, to be eating dinner with someone who had leprosy. Therefore, we know that Simon used to have leprosy. He used to be a leper. As I was studying, what I found is that many scholars think that he was probably someone who was healed by Jesus. It makes you begin to wonder, could this have been one of the 10 lepers that got healed? Could this have been the one who came back? And here they are now, Simon who's healed, opening up his house for Jesus and his disciples to eat supper. Why? Because generosity usually flows from gratitude. I've never found someone who's generous and not grateful. Like, here's dinner. I'm paying for dinner. No, I'm doing it. I'll do it, right? It always flows from gratitude. Generosity always flows. So here's Simon. He's been healed and now he's being generous. He's opening up his house. I want to ask you a question this morning. Do you open up for other people to have the same encounter that you've had with God? If God has healed you, if God has done something in your life, are you creating a space, are you creating opportunity for others to encounter the same God that you've encountered? Are you sharing your faith? Listen to what God's done for me. Listen to this healing. Listen to what he's doing. Are you inviting them to church? Are you giving? Man, I know what this church has done. I know what God's done for me. Therefore, I'm giving back to God so that someone else can know. Simon is someone who went through something. Now he's on the other side, and he's opening up a space for other people to encounter the same God he did. And as they're at Simon the leper's house, it says, can we go to the next verse? It says, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. So this woman walks in, probably unannounced, probably uninvited, against the protocol of that time. But I love that this woman, she comes in and she says, I don't really care what the protocol is. I have a gift that I need to give to Jesus. I don't really care what you have to say. I have this gift and I need to give it to him. It says that it's very expensive perfume. Some translations, some other accounts of the story say it's up to a year's wages to pay for this one thing of perfume. A year's wages. And she says, I've invested in this. Can you imagine if you took a year's wages and you invested it into one thing? Sounds like a treasure to me. What does she do? She goes up to Jesus and she pours her treasure out. Why? Because where the treasure is, there the heart will be. She pours out her treasure, and it's a beautiful moment, but the disciples, they start chirping. Look at what the disciples say. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. Why this waste, they asked. This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor. Why this waste? Why is she doing this? This could have been given to the poor. I love that she just doesn't care. She comes in against protocol. She comes in a place that maybe she shouldn't have been. She walks in and she pours out. She doesn't care what everyone else says. If you've noticed in our world today, everyone has a lot to say about what everyone else is doing. Hence the picture of my house with Christmas lights on it. But she has this mindset. I've got this gift to give to him, and I need to give it now. And look at what Jesus' response is to this. Aware of this, Jesus said to them, why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing. The poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. The disciples are saying, hey, she's got the wrong value system. She should be caring that we could sell this and give the money to the poor. And just say, no, she has the right value system. The poor you're going to always have. I'm only here for a moment. He's not taking a shot at the poor in this story. What he's saying is they're still going to be here. I'm only here for a moment. I'm only here for a moment. They're going to be here. You can give to them. I'm only here for a moment. She has the right value system. And this is going against what everybody else would be doing, because what we see is that she's doing this to prepare for his burial. Before this, the norm of this time would be after someone dies, then you do this. But what she recognizes is I have this gift to give. Why would I wait? Why would I have a someday mindset when I can give it right now? She goes in and she pours the oil out. She dumps a year's worth of wages all onto Jesus. Why this waste? Sometimes to the world it looks like waste when we know it's really worship. Why the waste? To the world it doesn't make sense. To the world right now, they'd be saying, save up all that you have. Store up for yourself treasures right now. You don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. You need to gather, keep. You need to do this for yourself. You should focus on you first. Don't waste it. Why would you praise right now when you just got that diagnosis? Why would you give right now when you just lost your job? Why would you give right now when you have these financial? Why would you give when you have all that? It doesn't make sense. Why the waste? But it's not waste, it's my worship. It's my worship, it's my praise, and my praise doesn't just have to be singing. My praise is in my living. My praise is in my giving. It's my worship. Don't let what the world calls waste stop your worship. Doesn't make sense to them. They don't get it, but to me it's worship. It's not wasted. She pours the oil out. She dumps it all in. And I love that it says that she broke the bottle of perfume. She broke the box of perfume. Can I tell you that you maybe came in today broken, but broken things can still worship God? So why? Why would someone do it? Why would someone take a year's worth of wages, a very expensive perfume, and pour it out in a moment? Well, identity gives us all the context here. Have you noticed that to know someone's identity gives you more context of them? To know who they are gives you context. Pastor Luke and I, we got hired at the same time here at New Hope. And for many years, even up to today, what I found is that people still get us confused. There's been many times one of us will preach, the other person will be out at the door greeting, and they'll come to one of us and be like, oh, great sermon this morning. Thank you so much. And Pastor Luke and I now just accept it like, thank you. There was one time I got done preaching on a Sunday morning. Pastor Luke was out of town. He calls me. He said, hey, someone just called me to tell me great job on my sermon this morning. It's like, I wasn't even there. The blessed life, hello. But identity gives the context. So who is this woman? In Matthew, it says the woman. Mark has the same story, and it says the woman. But John tells us the name. This woman is Mary. Not Mary, mother of Jesus. Not Mary Magdalene. Mary, sister of Martha. Sister of Lazarus. Ah, Lazarus. Maybe you don't know the story of Lazarus. Lazarus one day comes down with a sickness. Doctors can't figure it out. Medicine can't solve it. Mary sends a message to Jesus. The one you love is sick. That could be a whole message right there. Jesus responds, don't worry, this sickness will not end in death. But Jesus delays coming back. And while Jesus said it won't end in death, Lazarus dies. And Jesus doesn't come back the first day, the second day, the third day, the fourth day, which at time that culture would say that 4 days is you're dead. Like there's dead and then there's dead. And Jesus shows up. Mary, as Jesus is coming up, she runs to him. If you would have been here. This is where we see the short of scripture. Jesus wept. Why? Because Jesus cares about your problems. Because Jesus cares about your emotions. Jesus walks up to where Lazarus is, says, Lazarus, come out. Lazarus, get out of that grave. Lazarus, come here. And Lazarus walks out of that grave. Real life resurrection. Oh, so Mary, she's got a story. She's not giving for something, she's giving from something. How much would you pay for resurrection? A year's wages? 3 years? 5 years? Would you give everything? Can I tell you that the story of Lazarus isn't just a story of Lazarus, it's a story of me and it's a story of you. That if you've said yes to Jesus, that you were once dead in your sin, dead in your shame, dead in your pain, dead in your guilt, but Jesus came and he brought you from death to life. Resurrection, that we are alive today in Jesus, and that this life, it's not the end of it, but someday we're going to rise again. Someday we're going to spend eternity in heaven with him. There is real life resurrection. Of course I would pour out the oil. Of course that's where my treasure is. He brought me from death to life. I love this story of Mary as we see Mary. And as I was studying this week, I was getting so excited. I feel like I probably talked to Pastor Luke 14 times this week, because I was like, listen to this, what I just found in this story. Listen to this. I told my wife I could preach all day on just this story of Mary, but they're only giving me another 4 minutes or so. I don't know. Every time we see Mary, where is she at? The feet of Jesus. The story that we just read. There she is pouring her oil out. The story with Lazarus, she runs and she falls to the feet of Jesus. The story with her sister Martha, where is she at? Martha's doing all the work. Where's Mary? At the feet of Jesus. What a posture to have. What a posture for us to have. To not be like the disciples just sitting around judging and critiquing, but to be at the feet of Jesus. The poor you're going to always have, I'm only here for a moment. And every one of these stories, she's misunderstood. With Martha saying, I'm doing all the work, and there she is. With Lazarus, people are saying, he's dead. What are you doing going to him? With the disciples and the oil, they're saying, what a waste. The world doesn't understand why we give, but we know why we give. We know why we live in surrender. We know why we worship. We know why we praise. We know why we pour it all out. Would you stand with me all across the room this morning? As I was thinking about this story, here's the disciples, the ones who have been with Jesus. Makes you wonder, did they listen to anything he said? Like what is there not to get about this? Why the waste? That's their response to this beautiful act. Why the waste? And I started to wonder, man, if only they understood. If only they had a full grasp of who this man is, of who Jesus is, of what he has done, of what he's going to do. I don't think the response would be, why the waste? I think the response would be, that's all you're gonna give? That's it? That's a pretty small gift for someone who's done everything for you. And as I look at my life, and then as I was studying this week, there was just moments that I was reflecting, and I'm just thinking that's all I gave? That's all I poured out for him? That's it? What's 1 year wage? What's 5 year? I want to give him everything. He wants your heart. When he has your heart, it's a beautiful thing. It's a life of fully surrendering. It's a life of not just putting money in a bucket, but putting my life in a bucket, saying, God, I'm going to give it all to you. God, I surrender all to you. This morning, the response is simple. It's not going to be passing around a bucket to see if I pricked your heart hard enough to get you to give. The response this morning is a response like Mary, who wants to be at the feet of Jesus. Who wants to say, God, you can have all my heart. God, I live surrendered to you. If that's you this morning, you just want to say, God, I surrender to you. God, I lay my life. God, I give it all. That whatever you call me to do, I'm going to do. Whatever you call me to give, I'm going to give. Wherever you want me to go, I'm going to go. God, I'm putting my life in an offering bucket right now. If that's you this morning, worship team's going to play. And I just invite you, just as an outward expression of an inward decision, can we just come forward right now? Just as a response saying, I want to sit at the feet of Jesus. I want to be in his presence. I want to say yes to him. God, I give it all to you. God, I lay it down. God, today we surrender to you. Today we say yes to you. Today we open up our lives to you. Say we give it all. We surrender. Today we say we want to be at your feet. We don't want to be like the disciples and critique everything, but today we want to give it all. We pour out our oil. If that's you and you just want to say, yes, God, I surrender to you in everything, in my giving, in my life, in my living. I say yes. I pour out my oil. I pour it out. You can have it all, God. We surrender to you.
I just wanna